I want to step back for a second and talk about the hypocrisy of David Hoffman's statements. You know, he rails against the big banks and the Wall Street banks. He's done it from day one. We all see his commercials where he goes after the Wall Street banks. Here's a guy who's put significant amounts of his own money into this campaign, has hundreds of thousands of dollars invested in stock of these big Wall Street banks that is protected by TAR. So these investments are protected by TAR money and taxpayers. And he's now using that money to fund his campaign. Is he doing anything illegal? No. But the hypocrisy of continuing to go after these big Wall Street banks when he used that money to fund his campaign is staggering.
Thank you, Alexi. David.
Well, while I'm a big supporter of healthcare and universal coverage, I feel compelled to respond to that attack. I'm thrilled that the former banker, state treasurer for the last 3 years, has brought up the issue of banks. I certainly don't think it's someone we need as a nominee in the general election, and he needs to get his facts straight. I, like many Americans, own stocks in a wide variety of companies. I do own stocks in 2 of the big banks. My holdings in those banks amount to less than 0.1% of the ownership of those banks. And this person to my right, however, owns a much greater amount of a bank where not only was he a big has-been and still is a large owner, but for 3 years helped run that bank, a bank that is now, and let's be clear, banking has nothing to do with my history, my work, anything like that. But the person to my right, it's a critical part of this experience. In fact, he's only held 2 jobs, and the job that just before this one was as the vice president and chief loan officer of a bank that is now one of the worst performing in the country. So I'm happy to continue this discussion at any time. People all around the state are right to ask, who can we trust, and why can we trust people when they make promises? We see that at home and we see that in Washington. And that's why I said that the record of the people standing on the stage is of critical importance. I am proud of my record, that I have been independent and have been effective in achieving results. But in terms of the way I will conduct my affairs, both in this campaign and in Washington, we have to be honest about the harmful effect of money in politics. Mr. Giannoulias talked about his pledge to not take certain kinds of PAC money in lobbies, but what he left out was that he still takes some PAC money and some lobbyist money. And I am the only one who takes no PAC money and no lobbyist money, period, in a black and white way.
We see this every day. People in Illinois, especially in Illinois, are cynical and skeptical of their elected officials. That's why my first day in office, I signed the most wide-ranging comprehensive ethics package in state government. That's also why I'm proud to be the first candidate who runs the United States Senate not to take money from federal lobbyists and corporate PACs. I'm glad that Mr. Hoffman has joined me in that endeavor. Let me step back and talk about Mr. Hoffman's attack on my pledge. You know, since he's been in this campaign, he's been falsely attacking me and my family. The first time he did the Chicago Tribune called him out on it, he apologized to my campaign. Then he attacks a labor organization that represents nurses and janitors by using the same right-wing tactics that are used by Rush Limbaugh, the same talking points that Glenn Beck used. I'm hoping that we can elevate the level of this debate to the point we talk about ideas, moving this country forward, and making sure people have access to good paying jobs.
Mr. Giannoulias continues to try to turn toward me and attack, and he wants to elevate the debate, yet he's continuing to do that. He talks about that it's not fair to talk about the bank because it's about his family. What the voters in this room and around the state deserve is a comparison between the candidates and the records. And when you're 33 years old and you've only held 2 jobs, and your first job was as the chief loan officer of your family's bank, it's worth looking at how your performance was. That performance and that bad performance is showing up in the bad performance of the bank now. It has nothing to do with his family. It's about his job performance when he was at the bank. And fundamentally, I don't know how he can ask us to trust him with the nation's business in Washington when he couldn't even protect the people's money in his job as treasurer with regard to the Bright Start program. A program that on his watch lost $85 million when the money was invested in risky mortgage-backed securities and junk bonds after families were told that their money was safe.
I'm going to get a chance to defend myself here against David Hoffman. This has become a fun game. I'm not attacking David, I'm just letting the record be straight on what your history is. As far as Bright Start, we're taking it from one of the worst college savings programs in the country to what is now one of the top 3 in the United States of America. And as far as your comments about my age, this is not about candidates' date of birth. This is about the depth of their ideas, of their judgment, and of their experience. You've never created a job, you've never helped to fight and save a job the way I have at Hard Marks and Plains. You've never been involved in economic development to help small business owners and entrepreneurs. entrepreneurs and families that are struggling every single day. You're more interested in talking about your resume and who you are and who you've accomplished and all your applause lines. That to me is not leadership. That to me is not ideas.
But I have to say that one of the reasons that people are so concerned about trusting is because they hear politicians talk about things like the Bright Star program being one of the top 3 in the country, when fundamentally it's not true. Reports have come out that have said that it's no longer one of the top programs in the state. And for Mr. Giannoulias to talk about the story of the people who have trouble affording college, when on his watch, one of his job performance issues was not managing the Bright Star program properly, so that many parents who thought their money was safe, many of my friends, have lost their college savings and have had trouble taking their affording college for their kids. The truth is that job performance matters. Mr. Giannoulias talked earlier about that I was talking about my resume. We all need to talk about actions. We all need to talk about the record. We all need to talk about what we've done. This is a political season and there will be lots of words and lots of rhetoric. But what's mattered, and this especially matters given the history that we've seen in Illinois politics where we've been burned so many times before, what matters is what people have done in their jobs.